was living below my means because I knew the target that I had and I knew what I was working towards. So after I left home at 18, I moved in with my auntie, things were kind of calm, and then I got pregnant. And then, what's it called? I got pregnant like about 6 months later or something. So then during that year, I had to put things together to now prepare myself to move because I was like, nobody wants a crying baby. But then my son doesn't actually cry that much, to be honest. So so then I moved out of there as well later on. And then when I found out I was pregnant, I was like, okay, so I'm definitely not putting my child in the education system that we have. So I'm going to homeschool, so I need to put myself in a position to provide, doing something from home. So then I started Oxo Essence, but I had been making the hair and skincare products before that. But this time I was like, okay, let me stop just selling to family and friends. Let me actually start selling it properly to everyone. So then I started that, and then I've been doing that so far. Then last year, as I was, before I gave birth, I said I needed to overcome my anxiety because whatever I'm feeling, my child's going to feel, and it's not fair onto them for me to do that, put the anxiety onto them. So I started to work on my personal development. I started to work on my self-discipline, and I was doing really, really well. Then one time a family member just triggered me. Everything got undone, and then I realized that until I've solved the root thing, it's always going to come back, and they're always going to have the power over me, which was that fear of rejection. It was that fear of not being good enough, because I've always been seen as a good kid. And it's like, even when I got pregnant, I didn't tell my friends until my son was like 6-7 months. And then, but the thing is, they will see me showing up, they will see me doing things, so it's like, wait, when did you have time to even be pregnant and have a child? And it wasn't because I thought my friends wouldn't be there, that type of thing. It was an internal thing, and I call that toxic accountability, because I expect so much from myself. I was just blaming myself. I was like, how could you put yourself in this position? You were actually getting your essence back within, like you were actually starting to get happy again after leaving my dad's house. So I didn't tell them for a long time. It really took a while. Like I'll text my mentor. I'm like, okay, next week I'm going to text them and say that, yeah, I've got a child. He's like 6 months, but then it's like, what? And it's mad. How am I gonna say that? So I actually ended up. I did tell them last year. And then they were like, wow, Danielle, man, why didn't you just tell us? Like, we would have actually been there. And there's certain friends, like one of my friends, she's like family, her family is like family as well to me. So she was like, well, my mom is like, when are you bringing the baby over? And it's one thing as well, I'm so blessed to have a supportive network. And for me, even if you don't have that, we're always products of our environment, but even if the environment is not as suitable, you can always cultivate your environment. That's one thing I'm a believer on, and that's one thing I have always done, cultivated my environment. I've cultivated the people around me. I've always had a good support network around me, with my friends, the type of people I'm around, because I look at the values that we have, and if we have similar values, it goes further. And we're always there, even if we're not texting every single day. I know I can rely on you, and that is one of the things that has like kept me going and helped me stay strong. And it's also a thing where for me, there's no failure is not an option. It has to work or it has to work. I'm gonna find another way, and that has just made me push through with everything, because everything I put my mind to, brought to fruition. And from actually putting practical things in place to start overcoming my anxiety, and after my auntie triggered me, which was a blessing to see that unless I unplug the root of the things that actually planted that seed, you're always going to keep on having control over me. That's what led me to starting unplugging the root with practical things that I actually started to do, because talking was not doing anything. Like, talking is okay, it helps you understand what's going on, but when you realize what trauma is when something overloads your nervous system, and now it rewires it. So when you when you meet something again, because there's an association with that experience and what happened previously, your body thinks that you're in danger. And that's what trauma is. But a lot of people think that trauma has to be something extreme that happens to you. That's why they don't take it seriously when someone says they have a deep fear of something, or when someone is not able to actually thrive in social settings because of what's going on. But then you're thinking, right, it's not that deep. If someone tells you it's not that deep, they disregard your emotions, and you need to be very wary of that. Because, and we have built a culture around, it's part of the culture, it's not that deep, man. Just like man up, that type of thing. And not just to men, like to girls, like just get on with it, just push through. But the thing is, the person blatantly disregarding your feelings and things that you're communicating as well, and that goes to setting boundaries. When we're growing up, boundaries are not something that we're normally allowed to have. And when you set a boundary with your parents sometimes and say, I don't like this, or I don't really agree with it, it's seen as being disrespectful. But no, that's a boundary I'm setting. And also with kids, you think that when you're setting a boundary with a child, it has to be harsh, or it has to be like cutthroat. No, like with my son, if he's holding something, I take it from him, he starts crying, I still hold him. And it's like, I'm still consoling you. You can't have that, but I'm still going to be there. Because if every time you do something wrong, or every time that you make a mistake, the person that's supposed to love you the most is either isolating you or shouting at you, how the hell would you feel comfortable to make mistakes? And as people, the way we learn is through feedback loops. We learn through making mistakes, and then making mistakes again, and see that, oh, I should have moved it a bit this way, not a bit that way. And even going back to that, like when I made me just remember, when I was about 14, like about a year after I'd come, like things were so bad, and when I was talking to my mom, she didn't believe, my biological mom, she didn't believe me with what was going on. And the only people that believed me were my parents I grew up with, but they didn't have any parental control. And one time I told her about, I cut myself, but I wasn't suicidal. But then the thing was, I cut myself to send a picture to say that, I actually cut myself because of what's going on. But then I was like, these are actually gonna think I'm mad. Because they don't think I'm actually mad, because that's what African parents go to. So I was like, okay, nah, let me not say that. But then I did tell my mom later on, my biological mom later on, and then she was like, oh, I thought you were lying. She said that I'm basically lying about everything that was going on. And that goes, and I say that to show as well, a lot of the time there's a lot of kids crying out, but then we say they're attention seeking. But what's wrong with attention seeking? What's wrong if I actually need that secure attachment from someone and I'm shouting at people? No one's ever listening to me, or no one's ever hearing me when I'm talking. And it's so easy to go to that point and say that you're just attention seeking, but then I've tried to communicate so many different ways, and no one's actually hearing me out. And it's being able to decipher between that and get into a better way of communicating and actually taking things in that people are talking about. So now I actually want to go, I've kind of explained what triggers are, which is, I've explained what trauma is a bit within, and go into what triggers are. Sometimes triggers, you might get upset and you don't even understand why. Triggers can be something from the smell, something from the taste, just a memory of a certain place can trigger you. And a lot of the times within our community, trigger shows through someone being angry, someone being easily irritable, someone just getting upset for no reason, not being patient. But we think that that's just how I am. You need to do things quick. You never listen to me. I'm just going to do things by myself, being hyper independent. And that thing of I don't need anybody, I'm going to do everything by myself, that's a trauma response. That's not you being independent. And as people, we're always interdependent. In this world, you can't get anywhere without anybody. And as much as I've been able to push through things kind of by myself, I wouldn't have been able to do it without the people around to support me. And when you start to identify that these things are your triggers, and these things are your triggers, and these are your coping and defense mechanisms, you can start to pave way to do better. Because sometimes you might be talking to someone, or if you see you have certain friends, whenever you talk to them, they always get highly defensive. It's not that it's not just that they don't want to take accountability. They've always felt attacked, so they don't know how to respond. They don't know how to actually take accountability now, because every time someone talks to me, they're saying that I've done something wrong, so I need to protect myself. So your coping mechanism is a way that you protect yourself to go through things. A defense mechanism is a way that you block out things. And those are normally very negative with the defensive mechanisms, because when you put those things in place, they block you from actually progressing, and they hurt a lot of relationships. Because now you're not actually able to communicate properly and take things in, because you put a shield up so no one can hurt you. But in the long run, you're the only one getting hurt. And does anyone have any questions so far? No questions so far? Okay.
Oh, I've got one, sorry.
Yeah.
How to tell when a behaviour that you are displaying is a defence mechanism?
Mm-hmm.
How can you tell? How does someone identify I'm using a defence mechanism?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So some of the is when you know some of the common defense mechanisms, which is either blocking out what someone else is saying, getting highly defensive, and always having to rebuttal or say your side of the story, and not actually taking in what people are saying. And sometimes the coping mechanisms is just pushing through. A lot of people use work and going to the gym as coping mechanisms, and it's like it's therapy for me, but no. Because you're using that to block out actually solving the problem that's there. And that problem is not just showing up within like yourself, it's showing up within your work, it's showing up within your relationships, and it's showing up with how you show up with yourself. So you can't really be honest with yourself if you're always blocking out things, or if you're always running away, because whatever you run away from will run you. Because it's always going to have power over you until you solve it. And your triggers is like a phone call. It's like, this is a problem that you have. A lot of people are like, right, that actually triggered me. I feel so triggered. What are you going to do about it? Are you actually going to see what triggered you, or are you just going to complain that you're triggered? They don't see that as a call, as a wake-up call. Like, there's a problem that you have not like solved. There's a problem that you haven't looked into. So that you need to look into that and start responding. So, now that we get the gist of coping and defensive mechanisms, I wanted to go a bit into, let's actually go into confrontation. Because that's something that is hard, even me. When it comes to confrontation, I don't like being told what to do sometimes. Sometimes when I'm being told what to do, it's like, I already know. And then I realized it's because I've been shut down so much, and it's like there's always been such a high standard that I've had to uphold to. So it's like, I don't like it when I'm being told, I'm being spoken to like I don't know what I'm talking about, because I know what I'm talking about. Oh, I just need to learn through making mistakes. And I don't mind making mistakes. So normally, when it comes to confrontation and stuff, the defense mechanisms just come up, because that thing of feeling unsafe or feeling unheard when you were a young person, it comes back up. It's like, I don't want to feel like you're trying to say I'm incompetent, because I'm not. And then that blocks you sometimes from actually making progress, because now you can't actually take the steps to maybe improve something that you need to improve. And that kind of goes both ways with the receiver and the person that's giving the advice. Because sometimes confrontation might be a hard thing, and that kind of goes hand in hand with setting boundaries. Because it might be hard to set boundaries with certain people, because it's like, right, are they going to think that I'm being too, like, am I being too deep, or am I just being too, what's that word? Am I just being too much with it? But no, that's a boundary for you. And when people understand that something is a boundary for you, if they really love you, they're going to respect it. Even if it's something like, that might hurt them a little bit, they're still going to respect it, because they realize that it has a connection to something else for you that might be triggering, or something that might hurt you. That's why I need to respect that boundary. And I want to give a little tip when it comes to, a little approach when it comes to confrontation. And at the end, also what I'll do is, everyone that's got a ticket, some free resources as well. One of them is on confrontation. So when you're actually approaching confrontation, when you want to correct someone or someone is maybe annoying you, don't say that you've made me sad, you've made me angry. You can say that, speak in the I. Say, I am angry because every time that I feel like I'm not listened to, it reminds me of like not being listened to as a child. So then the person does not feel attacked. They don't feel like you are saying that they are making you angry. It's not their actions, it's not them that's making you angry, it's the action reminding you of the past. And sometimes it's not that and most of the time, behind all the anger is a hurt person, or is that thing of not being listened to or not being heard. So there's a little thing that we say, so there's a little process that I have, so it's opening with empathy. So opening with empathy, speaking in the I. So I am upset because whenever I don't feel listened to, it makes me sad. And the next one is express your intention. And I'm telling you this because I value our relationship and I don't want to harbor any resentment towards you without saying anything. And then asking for collaboration. So now, whenever you do this thing, can we collaborate? So maybe I might not pull you up on it, I will remind you if you forget. Or now we work on certain things within that. Maybe if you need help with knowing how to articulate it, I can help you with that so that I don't feel triggered. So now we're working together, and it's not a thing of, so now it's changed from you're making me angry every time you speak up or every time you don't listen. Now it's a thing of how can we work together and how can I put it in a way where you don't get triggered to actually start overcoming it, and is in a more collaborative and cooperative manner. So what do you think of that process as well? Especially, we've all had some confrontation of some sort, but using that process instead of just saying that I'm upset right now, you made me upset because you didn't listen to me.
I think it's brilliant. I'm glad I came today just for that bit. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I think it leaves room for improvement and change, as opposed to just saying you made me angry. Now they feel that thing of defense and it's awkward, they might pull away. Whereas if you're saying, oh, I feel this because of something else, then it removes, then they can deal with you differently and be more considerate. And it's not that you don't like them or you have a problem with them. It's just the situation. It gives more room for you to work together, like you said, and move forward, as opposed to just shutting them down.
Yeah, definitely. And there's a thing where even we as people sometimes, and even me sometimes, it's like, you disrespected me, but no, I feel disrespected because a boundary for me is this and that boundary has been crossed. So now it's easier for them to take it in. And it's like, what is your purpose of actually doing that? When you state the purpose as well, it disarms them. Because when someone feels like they're being, you're confronting them, their nervous system goes into overload. So, and what happens when your nervous system goes into overload, the blood rushes from your brain to your limbs. So like literally your frontal lobe, which is actually in control of you making decisions and actually processing things, it's not being activated. It's not being active during that time. So when you're shouting at someone, you're screaming or that type of thing, they literally physically cannot process it because of what's going on physiologically. So whenever you're approaching things with people, this is another route that you can take to actually say, hey, this is a problem I have, this is a boundary I have. And one thing I wanted to touch on with boundaries as well is that boundaries is about self. Boundaries is about things that you put in place to make sure you're working as efficiently as you need to, and to make sure that you're not harboring things as well. And if we had boundaries, so many things would work so much better, because you would now see if people are actually understanding of you, your needs, and also how they process things. Because when someone has a boundary, you won't take it personally because you see that it has to do with them and not you. And you can actually put that in place for how people treat you, because you teach people how to treat you by what you accept. And that's one thing I've been going by like so hard since last year, because I had taught certain people to treat me like I'll just take anything, because I really thought I was an easygoing person. But then recently I realized that, was I actually easygoing, or was I just agreeing with everything because I was a people pleaser? And that was my way of actually avoiding conflicts, because I will just agree because I don't want you to think that, oh, I'm too picky or that type of thing. I'll just agree with everything. So because I'd become so agreeable since I was younger, now it's showing up as, oh, I'm just an easygoing person. But no, I just didn't have any boundaries. And when you start to say things for what they are, then you see what your problems are, and you can put things in place. And you can start to actually advocate for yourself and not just let people walk all over you. Because when, like the thing with kids testing boundaries, when people test their boundaries with you and they see that you're gonna bend, they're gonna keep on doing it. And you've taught them how to treat you. You've taught them that they can treat you anyway, and you still make excuses for them. And sometimes we allow people to treat us in a negative way because it has more to do with us, how we treat ourselves and how we show up for ourselves. So sometimes because we create excuses for ourselves, it's like we can create excuses for someone else. Because, oh, I know I'm not really sticking to my plan, like my gym plan this month, that type of thing. Or I know that I don't always keep my promises. So because someone else is not keeping their promises, because I do it, it's okay for them to not keep their promises as well. So sometimes, that's why it always starts with self. So you need to start keeping those promises to yourself. Because now, because I have that standard for myself, I have the same standard for you as well. So you need to show up to that standard because I can show up to that standard for myself. And sometimes you allow things because you're allowing like mediocrity from yourself as well. That's why you allow it from other people as well. And when you start to look at things like that, it always starts with self. It gives you like so much wider perspective with it as well. And when it comes to culture and confrontation and raising kids up, we think that sometimes we're so concerned about looking like a bad parent that we don't actually do the things to be a good parent. So you're so concerned of looking like a bad parent because your child is acting out, but you're not actually meeting their needs in that moment. When a child is overstimulated, that's when they might cry. Sometimes when they've been out for so long, they literally like, you know, sometimes when you're out, you're just tired, you just want to go home, and that one friend is just chatting, like, they're just there for a long time, it's like, I'm trying to go home. That's how kids feel sometimes when they go out. Or sometimes, like, they're still learning how to communicate. They don't even know how to express how they feel. But then you're saying that if you don't keep quiet, look, like, just give them that look, and you're just shutting them down, and you're not actually helping them express themselves fully. Or even if they're throwing a tantrum, instead of you actually comforting them, you're just ignoring them, or you're just shutting them down within that moment, but you're not actually meeting that need because you don't want to look like a bad parent that does not know how to control their child. And because you don't want to look like that to other people, you're putting other people's needs before your child's needs. So you're putting how other people will view you as a bad parent over actually being a good parent and actually like going down to your child's level, helping them regulate their nervous system and like regulate themselves, breathe through it, and actually calm down. Because you don't want to look like a bad person. And a lot of the times, even within our personal lives as adults, we do things so that we don't look bad to other people. We don't look like we don't have our stuff together to other people, but then we're not actually caring for ourselves or meeting the needs of ourselves, because we don't want to look like we don't have it all together. And the thing of that strong, I always say I don't want to be a strong, independent black woman. And I say that because the connotations with that is struggle, it's just struggle doing everything by yourself, it's hypervigilance. Like, why do I want to do everything by myself when I can create a community so we can do it together? Why would I want to suffer when I can actually be more conscious about the people that I have around me and surround myself, like build a community of people that have a similar goal so that we can get there together? And so many people are like, yes, I'm just going to do it by myself, you can't trust anybody, like people are going to let you down, this, that, and the other. But then when you start to realize that, what was your decision making when you were making friends? Did you actually take in their values? Did you actually ignore those red flags when they were shining bright? And when you start to see that, are you actually making friends because of the trauma that you've been through? Because when you have been through certain things, sometimes you find comfort in the toxicity because that's all you've ever known. And it's safer to be in a toxic relationship because you know how it's going to end. You know that it's going to end with you getting hurt, and there's a love, you have that love for being mistreated and then being loved the next day. And when you start to see that a lot of the things, it's not just about who you attract or like who you think, it's about who you accept into your life. And when you start to view things that way, you start to view that from a place of taking ownership over the decisions you're making, over the place that you're putting yourself in, and you start to take the power away from people, because people don't make you do things. People don't make you angry so that you lash out. No, you choose to, not you choose to, but you've not learned how to destimulate yourself so that now you're not being controlled by your emotions. And when you start to view things like that, you start to let people have less power over you. And you start to be more peaceful, because now it's like I have a deep understanding, so now this thing cannot really trigger me, because I can see that this thing is coming from a place of hurt and not a place of actual, it's not just that they're angry for any reason or they're just short-tempered. They're literally just hurt. They've never been heard. And to just push through, now they just want to do everything themselves. But then, as I said earlier, you can always curate your environment. Whenever people are like, my mom is so strong, I've never seen her cry. Do you know how damaging that is? Because as a child, if you've never seen your mom cry, that means that now for you, it's taboo to cry. It's taboo for you to actually just have a bad day or be upset, because you've never seen that happen. So it's like, I need to be to that standard. And it's like, I can't break down because it's unacceptable. I've never seen my mom do that. And because my mom is so strong, I look up to my mom. So I'm trying to be like that as well. But that's so damaging with a child that can't express themselves. And you have a lot of kids in schools that are like, they're just pushing through everything. They're processing everything, and they get into trouble. They're doing certain things that are not good for them, because that's all, you're literally teaching them to be in survival mode. That's survival instincts. And even when it comes to beating your child, I was watching a video of a woman that was talking about how during the slave, they said there were two videos. One said, spare the rod and spoil the child, but in the Bible, the rod was used to lead the sheep. And with the Lord's Prayer, it says, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. So how can something be used to comfort, be used to inflict pain? And if you had used the staff, if they used the rod to actually beat the sheep, they would have run away. But then that scripture is always used to why it's good to beat, you need to beat your children to discipline them. No, you need to guide them. And you need to be able to regulate yourself for them to be able to know how to regulate. And when it comes to mirror your nervous system, kids mirror your nervous system. So if you're also overstimulated, they're going to be overstimulated as well. And there was another video where a woman was talking about how during the slave trade, the slave era, women used to beat their child so that the slave master didn't have to beat the child, because when they do that, the child is more likely to die because of the excessive force. So within that moment, it was used to save the child. It was done out of love to protect the child. But then now we've taken that on as culture, because it has gone down within the generations of this is how you correct a child. But no, that was just within a moment of extreme hurt, pain, and the moment of not having any choice to do that to protect your child. And when you understand that on a physiological level, I always go down to that, because I want to cut out context, because it's like, oh, my child is not listening, they're always being bad, this, that, and the other. But no, it's all learned behavior. It all stems from somewhere. So if you look at where the behavior is coming from, and if you actually teach them, that is where you can make the change. And there was there was another woman that posted a video as well, and she said that what do you wish you could tell your parent each time they beat you or they shouted at you when you made a mistake? And there were a couple comments in there. It was like, what am I actually learning in this? What are you trying to teach me in this moment about what I did by beating me? What is that teaching me? What is it teaching me to not do the next time? When you sent me to my room when I was hungry, but I didn't like the food and didn't want to eat it, didn't you know I was still hungry? And do you think that you punishing me or shouting at me is going to improve our relationship, or is going to make it worse? It's easy to blame the child and say that the child does not listen and this and the other, but are you actually listening to your child? Are you actually making the time for your child? And sometimes people say that I do everything for my child, I break my back for my child, I have 2 jobs, that's not your child's fault. And a lot of the time they just want a simple attachment, they just want that connection with you. There was a woman that is a successful entrepreneur. She was talking about how she's working from home, this, that, and the other, provides everything for her child. And one day her child was sitting there with her and was like, "Mommy, is your phone more important than me?" And she was like, "No." Then she realized that even though she thought she was spending time with her child physically, she actually wasn't, because she was constantly on her phone working, that she wasn't being present with actually interacting with her. So she was missing that out. And sometimes your child is a bad breed because, not kids are not bad breeds, but then we say they're bad breeds, but your child is a bad breed because whenever the only time you give them attention is when they're bad. So because they want that attention, or they want you to actually pay attention to them, they're going to be doing badness. And because they don't have that love from home, we just say that, we say it, but we don't understand how deep it is. When that child is going out of the home to find that love, and is finding that validation from outside, because I've never been validated at home, I've never been seen as being good enough. Or it's like how you even correct your kids. It's like, "Oh, you need to know this, you got that right an hour ago. Why are you not good at it every time?" I wanted to ask this question as well. Like, if we start to put things into perspective with like romantic relationships sometimes, if every time you made a mistake, your partner would just either shout at you, or just leave you there, or just say that you need to be able to figure out, how are you going to feel? Does anyone want to answer?
You're going to feel disregarded, disrespected, and like you can't even.
Anyone else?
It will be a very reminder of what you were experiencing when you was a child. So it's not going to work.
Yeah, indeed.
Resentment will start to build.
Resentment will start to build. And if that happens within a relationship, and even when we say that if someone shouts at you, hits you within a relationship, that's abuse. That's one thing if that's abuse, but then with a child that's disciplined, but then when you're raising a child up, the early years are the foundation of what they find as normal when it's older. Why is it different? Why is it different in a relationship, romantic relationship or friendship, why it's different with a child? And one thing I realized, when I first had my son, I was sleeping at like 12 a.m. and I wanted to put him on like a schedule with his sleeping. And then later I realized that, he's actually gotten used to the schedule of sleeping at 12 a.m. So now I need to change the schedule again. But that was because I was waiting until he was a bit older to set the schedule. But then from the jump, the foundation's already been built. So if you're waiting until they're older to teach them, the foundation that you're laying now is what is being built, is the foundation that is there and that is staying there. And when you start to understand that as well, you start to see that what foundation are you laying for your child with how you respond to them? What foundation are you actually laying with how you speak to them? Because the self-talk, the way you talk to your child becomes their inner self-talk. And if you think you're waiting, you're mistaken. Because that's all they're always going to know. And there's no way for them to know different if they don't even know better, because they've not been exposed to better. And people think parenting is like, "Oh, my child is not doing this, they're not doing that." What are you doing? Because when you limit yourself with what you're doing, you limit what your child can do, because they haven't seen better, so how should they know better? You want your child to be better than you, but are you doing better? Are you actually putting yourself in a better place to be more disciplined or to regulate your emotions more? Because if you're always being reactive, how would they know how to actually calm down and respond? And people would say that, oh, that's what these people do, they just let their kids do anything. No, there's a difference between permissive parenting and conscious parenting. Permissive is just letting them do anything, but conscious is actually taking the time to teach them, taking the time to actually first regulate yourself, because they will trigger you and they'll make you feel like, they'll make you upset, but no. The thing is, I need to show how to regulate for them to learn. I need to show how to calm down, and it works. There's people that have done it with their kids and it works. Then you see their kids actually showing that same empathy to other kids as well, or to their siblings, because now I know how to do it. But how do you expect them to know better if you never know better or show better? Okay, so, oh gosh, I got a bit over time. So what I wanted to also talk about is, I'll just add a little bit onto that, and then I'll have time for some questions. When sometimes you say that I've been through it with my parents, they beat me this, that and the other, and I still turned out fine, or they shouted at me and I still turned out fine. Are you really fine, or are you just surviving? And it's not about you turning out fine, it's about how you felt within that moment. Because did you really feel loved within that moment when you were crying and bawling your eyes out? And people say that you understand when you get older, or it's like, oh, now I understand why my parents did that, but no. You can't undo that trauma that was done. Your nervous system is not going to understand why now whenever someone just says hello to me, I go into panic mode, or why I'm always on edge, or why I'm always overthinking. It's not going to understand. And now, the domino effect is going to have on the other aspects of your life. They're not going to be understanding. Because you get real life consequences. And it's nothing that you can change, and it's nothing that you had control over. It's their responsibility as the parent to actually communicate to you effectively and continuously try to help you understand and model it to you. You're not going to understand when you're older. Your trauma is not going to understand when you're older. And it's not going to be undone as well. So... are there any questions?
It's not really a question, but I think one thing I always say is, especially because some of our parents are like first generation or second generation immigrants in this country, we have to extend grace. And I know it's mad to say because everything that they do could have affected us. But some of them would literally, like you say, they're in survival mode. They're just thinking like, how am I going to keep this roof over my children's head? How am I going to do this, that, and the third? So when you don't put something back, to you it's like, oh, I just didn't put the cup away. But to them it's like, are you joking me? I just came over from wherever, and I'm legit trying to give you a better life, and I'm just asking you to put a cup in the sink. Like, why can't you do that? Why do I have to keep telling you that? And obviously, I'm very fortunate enough whereby my parents are saying you are first or second generation. Allow your children to make friends outside of their community, because they will see things and they will essentially come and report back. They'll say, oh, you know, Sam's dad lets him do this. You'll be like, huh? But like, that allows you to understand there's different ways of parenting. And I think with them as well, they don't necessarily utilize the access to information that there is, like the internet and stuff. They're not going to go on TikTok and be like, what's gentle parenting? They're not going to do it. So I think with exposing them to new cultures, you're ultimately giving them the access to teach you how they want to be treated. Sam's dad lets him have chocolate after school. That might not run in your household, but you can like maybe do it like once a week or something like along those lines. But like definitely, like if your parents are the first or second generation immigrants, extend just a little bit of grace, because it must be extremely difficult to move your entire life over here and then have to adapt to a completely different environment and parenting style.
No, definitely. I love that you brought that up as well, because even, and especially with extending grace, so like me and my biological mom, we don't really have a relationship like that. There has been times I have gone no contact with her, but now we talk here and there. But the thing is, I I know how to keep it at a distance and
Yeah.
set certain boundaries, but I still like kind of talk to her. The reason why most of the stuff that she's like done or not done, I don't take it to heart, is because I know that she literally does not know better. Like that's all how she knows how to survive. And for me, it's the decision that I made to still, what's it called? Kind of have her in my life, but obviously at a bit of a distance. But I love that you said that, and it's also when we're dealing with people in our everyday lives as well, people that might just like piss you off, that type of thing, realizing that they're literally not fully in control of what they're doing. I'm not saying that you should still just be allowing them to just be doing anyhow, but when you start to see it from that point of view, it's you don't even start to get upset. Because you see that that's their coping or defense mechanism to things. And that's the only way they know to actually keep themselves safe. So yeah, I love that you spoke about giving grace as well. Anyone else? Okay. Yeah.
Me.
Okay, so you and then him and then...
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So I was going to say, to an extent, don't you think we've all had some kind of negative event in our life, call it trauma or whatever? So do you think we've all got something to unpack now?
Yeah, like we've all had some sort of traumatic event, and some people might think, and it's very little when you understand what trauma is, which is your nervous system being overloaded, because it might be someone just telling you to shut up in primary school. And it's like maybe they told you to shut up every day and then they hurt your feelings. And because when you're a child, your feelings are so big, you take everything as factual. So because of that thing, like you might form, your brain will be rewired to find anything related to when that person told you to shut up as like dangerous, so then your defense mechanism kicks in. And it's being able to actually see when you have those coping and defense mechanism, and it's being brutally honest with yourself. Because if not, it's still going to be there and it's going to seep into other parts of your life as well. Next question?
It was more to, because I came halfway, so I missed something what you were saying before, but it was to the point of, you touched on something that made me think about when I'm relating to my children, and I find too often, I've said this around some of my circles, that a lot of us, whatever your generation, don't view our children as independent people in of themselves. And when you start to look at your child as not your child, but as an individual with thoughts, feelings, emotions and everything, it then allows you to see them as an individual and then see what is best for that person. Yeah. Sometimes, too often, we just see it as, that's my child, that's my child, that's my child, and they're an extension of you, they're almost like my property. And once you go away from that, not that I was there, but once I consciously tried to individual, when he or she says no to me, as foreign as that may be due to my upbringing, he's allowed to say no. Yeah. He feels like he doesn't want to do that. He's allowed to. The way he says it might be a bit, but he's allowed to want to say no, because when I then teach him to say no to someone telling him to do the wrong thing, he can't say no. Yeah. So we have to learn to kind of step back and see this is an individual, he's got his wants, his needs, his desires, our thoughts, our dreams, and all of these things, and then it can help you to also maybe tap into your inner and remember yourself, and then you can kind of empathize a bit more. So that's what you said reminded me of that.
Yeah, and that goes back to boundaries, because by allowing your child to set boundaries with you, they can set it with other people, because now they know how to do it, and it's even that thing of like little lies. Because once you introduce that, they don't know how to distinguish, and it goes back to consistency. You need to be consistent with everything you're teaching your child, because then if you're not, they start to get confused. And even though you think, it's only with me that my child does this, no. It's not only with you that your child does certain things, they're going to do it with everyone. And even how you speak to your child, would you want someone else speaking to your child the way you speak to your child? And if that's a no, that's a big problem. So, the next question?
I was just going to touch on what this lady in front of me was saying. So I just come back from Trinidad, and I think what I realised as well, I feel like a lot of our parents over here, they've become a lot more hardened by this kind of Western energy, because you've got to think, in the islands, I'm not sure about Africa, it's probably similar, but you don't need a lot. Like your money goes a lot further. But as soon as they come here, everything's like 100 miles an hour. I've got to pay bills, I've got to pay taxis, fines, this, that, and the other. So it's like we're so kind of like taken out of our element. It's like we're kind of transformed into this new, like, hardened kind of monster. So that was the first bit, just from what she was saying. But the actual question I had was, when you say in your speech earlier, I've got a friend who also struggles with anxiety, and I feel like they just work, and that's their way of dealing with it.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to know, what advice do you think I could give them to kind of help ease them away from the anxiety?
I would say definitely seeing how they feel when they have a rest, because there's certain people that, like, it's alien to them to rest. They feel like they're not doing anything with their life if they just have a little bit of a break, and starting to like unpack why it is that they feel like they can't stop working, because mostly it comes from a place of lack or feeling like you're not going to be able to provide to a certain extent for your family, that type of thing. But Alex, do you want to touch on that a bit?
Yeah, actually. So what I've found is that most, if not all, forms of anxiety come from a deep-rooted need to control everything, right? So, and why do we have that need? Well, it's through survival, it's through fear of some sort. So, one of the easiest ways to at least get to the cause of anxiety is to ask why, enough times, right? To others, but to yourself also, if you experience it. It's this why behind the why behind the why, because we live on this perpetual state in anxiety where you're keeping your head above the water, trying not to drown, but you're not going any further than that. You know, you're not realising that, oh, actually there's new land, I don't have to constantly focus on not drowning, I can walk and discover more, right? That's the next stage, and to be able to do that is just by getting to the bottom of the origins, why. Really, so it's usually rooted in fear, and it's the need to control things, especially the uncontrollable, and that's where our anxiety comes from. It's the uncertainty, you know, it's beyond our control, and because we don't have that, we go, oh wow, okay, well, what do I do now? Let me exacerbate it in other areas, you know, palpitations, work, because when you work and you're doing something, you feel like you're controlling, because you're doing something instead of letting go. So, that makes sense.
So just to add to it, because a lot, you know, when you're anxious, you kind of lose control of your body. So a great place to start is just to stop and count your breaths, breathe in, count them. I know everybody says this, but it's genuinely good advice, and that's why people say it. So when you start counting your breaths, everything else goes because you're busy focusing on breathing. So I would suggest, and that's something that you can do anywhere. There's not really any place where you can't count your breaths, and even if you just breathe in for 6, breathe out for 4, and you just do that for 2 minutes, it will reboot your system. Like today, before I got here, my presentation was not, my computer would not let me log into my presentation, and I was like, I can't go, I have nothing to present. But then I just breathed, and then I was like, do you know what, I'll just go, I'll leave or whatever. And so I was walking to the station, just breathing. By the time I got on the train, I was like, okay, well, even if my presentation doesn't work, I'll just talk, because I know what I'm going to say anyway. But in that moment, I wasn't, because I was trying to focused on trying to get the presentation working, the control thing, I forgot that actually I'm in control of myself. So breathing brought me back to actually, let me just control myself, and then everything else kind of falls into place.
Sorry, just to touch on what you said.
I'm not the one with the anxiety, by the way.
Everyone's just touching on each other's points. But just for your friend as well, as someone that is a ex-workaholic, sometimes it's the positive gain that you get from working. So it depends on what environment you work in, but let's say you work in a commission environment, you work for like those 3 extra hours, now you get like a bonus or something. That positive gain that you got in that moment is actually what's driving you. So it's like, I'm anxious, let me take that negativity and put it into something positive. Once I get the positive gain, then you love that feeling, and then that's why it causes a cycle. You're just basically chasing that feeling of having something positive to relate to.
Is the dopamine?
Yeah, literally, that's what it is.
So I'm a little bit confused, because I have young people telling me and older people who are stuck indoors since COVID saying they're anxious, they suffer from anxiety, they don't want to go outside, they stay in since COVID's happened. What's causing Because you're talking about control, so
Yeah. It's because they can't control the thing of, like, they can't control not getting sick. So because they feel like the only way for them to have control is to stay at home. Because if they stay at home, then you can't bring the COVID to their house or that type of thing. Or they might just let select people come to the house. So that's their way of having control by not going outside. Because when they go outside, it's out of their control. Like, it's out of your hands. If you're going to bump into someone and then, oh, you've got COVID now.
So they're not talking about saying COVID, so is that the underlying thing? Because they're just saying, since COVID, I'm just so anxious and not, you know, they may go to, now they actually don't go to parties like they used to. For the older generation, they're saying, well, there's no way for us to go, but the more we stay in, we're getting more and more, you know, lonely, anxious. And
Maybe it's in the subconscious now, but they still have those worries.
I think it still relates to the fear because as a young person, generally speaking, you trust that you're going to get well. As an older person, you get COVID, your chances are very all due respect. Like, that's probably what elder people are thinking. If I get sick, it's very, very murky waters for me. So it's that element and then self-perpetuating cycle of now stay in, feel lonely, doubles up my anxiety, out there, COVID, stay in, and then cycle, can't get out.
And they want to go out though.
But because of the fear, it's like hijacking them.
Probably baby steps, and it's hard because you can't prove a negative. You can't say you won't. You can't prove something that hasn't happened yet until the proof is in the pudding. So if they then get sick,
so you think they should just disregard it?
It's not a disregarding thing. It's
just live life.
I don't think it's wise to. It's not either or. There's a grey area in the middle, and we've got to find the appropriate grey area to baby step, to teach. More skilled people than me probably know how to do that. Like to say, to break it down, to alleviate their fears, to make them feel at ease, and to guide them through and to step by step take them out somewhere and show them. And they, like, when we learned to walk, it weren't one day you walked straight away, you dropped, you got up, you dropped, you got up. So it's a process type of thing. That's what I think seems logical to me.
Do you know what I think it is? I think it's, since COVID, everyone was like, because everyone was indoors for so long, you kind of got conditioned to being indoors, innit, and not being around a lot of people. So maybe they're just having a bit of social anxiety to the point where they're like, okay, I haven't been out around a lot of people for a long time, so I want to go out, but because if you think about it, if you're in your house a lot and you're elderly and you're probably by yourself, they've had a lot of time to spend in their head, innit? A lot of thinking time, innit? So they probably overthought everything so much to the point that they're like, okay, I want to go out, I don't know where to go. They're overthinking it, because I'll be real, I overthink it, I used to go out all the time. I still do go out, but I just feel a bit more like I overstudy and assess where I go because I don't really want to be around everyone. So maybe we're just conditioned subconsciously to not really want to be around people as much as we're used to, innit? Or some people might have,
So what I'm going to do is I'll just share a little thing with how to, when it comes to triggers, when you identify that you have a coping or defense mechanism, or that you're always maybe for some reason angry, or you have an unexplained behavior that you exhibit but you're not sure of, or have like overthinking, is a thing to first note down every time you have that behavior and what is happening within that moment. And then later go and unpack it, like what was happening, who was there. And when you note down every time, there's always patterns. Your relationships with people, everything, there's always patterns. It's hard to see the patterns that you see showing up each time. And then seeing that, okay, when was the first time I actually felt like this, or I felt like I wasn't heard this time, that, the other, the emotion behind it. When you start to dig into that emotion, then you see that, oh, raw, this from when I was a kid and my mom told me to go to my room. And sometimes it's that little thing that has just had a domino effect. But then when you start to look at it, you see that, okay, maybe let me start to do these certain things to, like one thing you do is flow state, to get into the thing of not being scared of, not always needing to have control, but trusting myself, that type of thing. And when you start to note down each time you have a defense mechanism come up or thing, sometimes, so first you notice the defense mechanism, then when you look at that, whenever that comes up, maybe every time someone mentions your mum, you always get defensive. Then you see that, oh, your mum's a trigger. So then after seeing the defense mechanism, then you can get to the trigger, and after the trigger, you see what happened before that started to form. When you go back to when it started to come about. And one thing for overthinking, it really helped me so much. Whenever I catch myself overthinking, I'm like, okay, I'm overthinking. Do I want this to stress me out? No. Like, is me overthinking gonna help it? No. What can I control within this situation? Maybe I can control how much work I put into creating the presentation. Can I control how many people come? No. But at least I put all my energy into what I can control, because I know that if I keep on focusing on what I can't, I'm gonna keep on overthinking. And each time I just catch myself. So the first day I did it, I had to catch myself like over 20 times. Second day it was like 15 times, then it's like 10 times. Because now you're programming your mind to catch yourself whenever you're overthinking. So now that's how you start to stop the overthinking, and you start to focus on more of what you can control.
Being in the present.
Yeah.